Are you paying attention? Good. If you're not listening carefully, you will miss things. Important things. I will not pause, I will not repeat myself, and you will not interrupt me. You think that because you're sitting where you are and I am sitting where I am, that you are in control of what is about to happen. You're mistaken. I am in control. Because I know things that you do not know. What I will need from you now is a commitment. You will listen closely and you will not judge me until I am finished. If you cannot commit to this, then please leave the room. But if you choose to stay, remember you chose to be here. What happens from this moment forwards is not my responsibility. It's yours. Pay attention.
And that's a clip from The Imitation Game. Delighted to say Benedict Cumberbatch. Very good.
Say it again. So delighted you get to say it twice.
Delighted to say Benedict Cumberbatch joins us on the programme. Hello, Benedict.
Hello, Simon. How are you?
I'm very good, and thank you. It's very nice to have you on the programme again. And normally I end up with listeners' questions, but there's just one I want to mention right at the very beginning.
All right.
From listener Jane, who says, is there anything that Benedict would like to punch Mark for this time?
It remains to be seen. We'll wait and find out.
Yeah, well, this was not the way it was reported recently, but actually, I think you just punched him lightly on the arm. This is going back years.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think there is some kind of evidence, isn't it? I mean, I don't know if back then you did, but I know you have cameras all over your studios now. But probably to protect Mark from other assaults by actors. But no, it was a light. Oi, and I tried to give him a sort of dead arm. I mean, he was sitting right next to me.
The temptation is overwhelming.
Yeah, exactly. And I've got a long reach, actually. It's more tempting when there's a bit more of a kind of, an arm's length between me.
And as I remember, one of the reasons that you wanted to punch him was for some of his comments about Keira Knightley. So
Precisely.
I was thinking about this.
As you were watching the film, I hope this didn't take over your view of the film.
No, not at all. I thought the film was terrific. And a couple of weeks ago, I introduced Rosamund Pike by saying she's the woman of the moment because of the number of movies she had all coming out at the same time.
Yeah.
But it occurred to me that you have been the man of the moment for quite a few years now, which
I don't really believe in moments. Maybe that's my secret. I know I'm being facetious, but genuinely, I don't. It scares me that, like any kind of hype or this is your moment. I mean, I want to be doing this until I'm old and grey, and no one wants to watch me or hear me doing it anymore. I really like my work. I really like my job. I love the people I get to work with, and as long as I keep a varied roster of stuff and don't overwork, then hopefully that'll be the case. And so that's very sweet of you to say that. I
guess you're on a roll. That's how it feels.
Yeah, I think so. I suppose I am. But I mean, it's just about going forward with the opportunities you've got, and if you capitalise on your breaks, then that's I guess what happens.
So The Imitation Game, you were playing Alan Turing. Just people will know some of the story, and they will know a lot about the Enigma and Bletchley Park story. Just
You've got a very smart audience. I'm sure they know a lot of the story. They might even know more than is in the film. But for the majority of us, and myself included, I definitely was surprised at how little I knew. Of the whole picture. I'd seen Derek Jacobi be extraordinary as Alan Turing in the filmed version of the play Breaking the Code. So I knew that version of him and that version of our story, or his story, I should say, Alan's story. And I knew a little bit, I guess, from school about Bletchley Park and what the burgeoning MI6 GCHQ was about in that part of the war, and what the work was that went on at Bletchley Park. But yeah, the full span of his life, what he achieved, what he stood for, and why he died, I didn't know. So I was sort of infuriated by that, angered and infuriated and embarrassed in equal measure. Why he's not on the front of textbooks or on the back of a £5 or £10 note, whatever denomination, I don't know. And maybe that will change. I hope it does, because he's a true hero, a quiet, stoic, disarmingly different, but still human and engaged one, and one that needs shouting from the rooftop. So hopefully that film will be part of that. He would never do that himself. That was one of his charms. He was quietly on to the next problem. But they were extraordinary problems, and he's the father of the computer age. He's one of the forefront philosophers and thinkers about artificial intelligence, an extraordinary technician and pure mathematician and cryptographer and biologist. I mean, the list goes on. He died for being true to who he was as well, which rightfully I think in many people's eyes marks him as being a martyr. Although he never made a political statement about his personal life, he never denied his sexuality when questioned about it, despite having had to live a very clandestine and secret life, and having to endure the persecution that the government and society at that time meted out to thousands of men in a similar position. And that again made him a hero to me, and a tragic hero in the sense at the end he was, I think, very, very aware of who he was and why he was the way he was, and he was stripped of any kind of function. He couldn't love, he couldn't work, he couldn't be who he was. He was a stranger to his own self because of the estrogen injections, and that really it really upset me. It still does, thinking about it. It upsets me when I see it in the film. I saw it at Toronto, and it's a weird thing being in your own audience. I don't like watching myself, full stop, and let alone something that's affecting like his story is. So it's a very odd emotional thing to write, but I was upset because it just he lived that, he died that, he endured that, and I'm really glad, at least as a storyteller, I'm getting to tell such an important story of such an extraordinary man.
So the film is this extraordinary juxtaposition of, on the one hand, this heroic story and thrilling story of the breaking of Enigma, and then, as you talk about, the tragedy of what happened to him after the war. And and the triumph of the film, I think, is to make the wartime stuff really exciting, even though you sort of know how it's going to end.
Yeah.
And that even though, and I think most people will know that Alan Turing committed suicide, you mentioned the estrogen injections, the shock of the fact that, not exactly in our lifetime, but in very recent history, the British judicial system was capable of saying to a man, 2 years in prison or chemical castration. And it's the barbarity of it that is still shocking.
It is. It completely is. It feels extraordinarily medieval. It feels devoid of any kind of nuance or subtlety or understanding. And it was. And I think it was born out of paranoia, fear, and terror, the idea of the Red Threat and the Cambridge spies. And it was, but mainly, I think, his outsiderdom was born out of the very fact that partly because of who he was, but partly because of his sexuality, that thousands of men, like I said before, suffered the same fate. And I think when you start to say that something's illegal, when you make it contraband, when it becomes something that is unallowable and criminal, you're going to create a clandestine environment. So of course the meshing of communism and homosexuality, those two things had a perfect marriage. Men for decades had to live secret lives if they were gay, and everything about their most intimate moments and feelings had to be not just suppressed but lived out in a very clandestine and secretive manner. So you can see why society had been, whipped up into a furor and terror and fear about communism, but at the same time, they created this marriage between the idea of an alternative political system and the best people to work as spies or people with secrets were people who were already living secret lives, which were gay men and women. I mean, that's the extraordinary thing. It wasn't illegal because Queen Victoria didn't believe such a thing existed, famously. So. It was horrendous. It was a horrendous period of history, and like you say, incredibly recent. And sadly, we still see it. We still see the fear we have as societies in the world when something is different in a time of hardship. You immediately scapegoat the thing that is different, the thing that is abnormal in your eyes, in the status quo conservative idea of what is normal. And that's has happened across the world, is happening across the world. I mean, what's going on now in the Soviet Union with the sort of nationalist, the intolerance of homosexuals and homosexual society there is appalling. And what happened with the Golden Dawn in Athens and across Greece was equally appalling. The birthplace of democracy, this nationalism that was, it took the form of thugs beating up men in parks. I mean, it was that barbaric. And in many ways, I guess, without making it too geopolitical, because these are personal things, it carries into ISIL. It carries into the idea of people becoming obsessed with one unassailable truth against all others, and all others being wrong incorrect and punishable either by death or persecution or prosecution. It's really disturbing that this isn't just a history lesson. It's something that's permeates our society now. It's not just a gosh, wasn't that awful now kind of moment in the film. It sadly has resonance still.
In the movie we see the young Alan Turing played fantastically by, is it Alex Lawther, I think?
It is, yeah, and he's just astonishing because he just contains that extraordinary moment where the wheels turn on Alan for the first time since it's the first time in our knowledge of him, in our version of the story. But this one moment where he's being opened up by this experience of this relationship with this boy who he clearly loves. It's unrequited, and at the point of Christopher Morcom is the name of the boy who died of bovine tuberculosis. And when he's told of his death, the immediate closing off of closeness, of association or love or any kind of open expression of his feeling for this boy, which you can clearly see flourishing before that, Alex does it so beautifully. Yes. It's one of the most heartbreaking moments of the film.
And there's a connection between his physical and vocal performance and yours. Did you? I mean, obviously you're not in the same scene together. But did you work together or with the same people to make that?
We talked together. Yes, we did. And Sarah Shepherd, who is the fantastic dialect coach that I had helped me with my stammer, and everybody with period dialect. She and I and Alex sort of talked through where we were going with things, and Alex sat in on a couple of rehearsals, but that was pretty much it. We both intuited very similar things. He's brilliant, Alex. I mean, he observed me, but he did his own thing at the same time, and yet there is a great correlation. He's wonderful, really wonderful. It's a very central part of the film. I'm thrilled for him.
So elsewhere, I just want to say, Kira, hooray! Rory Kinnear, boo! Charles Dance, boo! Mark Strong, hooray! So here he is running MI6. The last time we saw him running a secret service, it was the Jordanian secret service. But we think Mark Strong is fantastic in everything.
I mean, I don't know. I think he is. He's brilliant. He's a fantastic actor, as is Rory Boo and Charlie Boo. But I think the boo and the hoorays are a little bit broad stroke because this guy Charles Mingus, in our version, he's a very shadowy figure, and operatively he has to be. But the way he tortures Turing with the idea of his entire life being under his control is beyond. It's not perverse, but it's scary. I mean, he sees the good in Alan Turing, but he has no regard for the human being at all. In our version of the story, which to me doesn't make him that much of a yay. It makes him more of a boo yay.
Okay, all right.
Sorry,
I'm here for the broad strokes, and you can do the fine detail.
Nuance. But no, I that's the brilliant thing about Mark. He's incredibly likable, always. Whatever he's doing, and I think Charles and Rory too. Rory's his character Nock he's concerned about something that he thinks is the bigger picture, and he's infuriated when this man is entrapped into being prosecuted. That's not what he went after the guy for. And I think Rory does a brilliant job of investigating something with real vigor, and then the horrible turning of shame when he realizes he's brought about this persecution for moral indecency, as it was termed.
When Tom Hiddleston was on the show a few months back, he started doing
old bore.
He started doing his Shere Khan voice. Now,
for Christ's sake, can you just leave off my patch for one split second?
So you are Shere Khan.
Yes, I am.
George Sanders in the original Jungle was my favourite character. Yep. Just brilliant. This is an Andy Serkis production, as I understand it. So, is your Shere Khan better than Tom Hiddleston's? That's
well, clearly. I mean, I got the role. What do you want? I mean, what more proof is there than that? Listen, I don't like competing with Tom. He's too much of a dear friend, and there are loads of friends, including him, that we will have crossovers. There will always be moments either with classical roles or reprisals. So,
are you doing George Sanders though? Basically,
am I doing George Sanders right now?
No, not in general, but in the movie.
You'll have to wait and see.
Oh, okay.
You have to wait and see.
I have one more question from a listener. This is from Lenny. Can Benedict remember who Stephen Fry judged worthy to be placed above him in the Harrow reading competition in which he came second?
I think it was Nick Luck. Wasn't it Nick Luck?
I don't know.
He's now the racing correspondent of Channel 4, the racing presenter of Channel 4. I think it might have been him. Nick often won the Lady Bouchier reading competition. I probably spoke too fast. I have a habit of doing that, Simon. That's how I get some of the work I get.
Benedict, it's always a privilege to have you on the show, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me. Always fun to be on. Thank you.